I discovered the truth by accident. While helping my father with his laptop, he stepped away to answer a call, leaving a document open on screen. My heart nearly stopped as I read the details. $1 million trust fund established exclusively for my sister Amanda. Just days earlier, I had transferred $18,000 to pay for repairs on the family vacation home that they used every summer. 35 years of suspicions crystallized in that moment. I was never the favorite child, despite being the one they relied on financially. Growing up in Westbrook, Pennsylvania, our family appeared ordinary from the outside. My father, Richard, built a successful career as an insurance executive at Keystone Partners, while my mother, Diane, managed our household with meticulous attention. 4 years separated me from Amanda, and that gap felt like a canyon in how differently our parents treated us. From my earliest memories, expectations for me were crystal clear, straight as perfect attendance, piano lessons I never asked for, and a constant pressure to achieve. "Eleanor, you have such potential," my father would say, his tone suggesting potential was worthless without achievement. Meanwhile, Amanda received endless patience, second chances, and what my parents called room to find herself. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, my celebration dinner was overshadowed by Amanda making the junior varsity cheerleading squad. My acceptance to Cornell University with a partial scholarship was mentioned briefly at Thanksgiving, while Amanda's middle school art project dominated conversation for an hour. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college: morning shifts at the campus cafe, weekend admin work at the engineering department, and night hours tutoring struggling students. The scholarship covered about half my tuition, but books, housing, and living expenses fell entirely on my shoulders. My parents claimed they were saving for both girls' futures, though I never saw a dime of those supposed savings. After graduation, I turned down a corporate job offer to launch my own software development company. Those early years nearly broke me, sleeping on a futon in my tiny office space, showering at the gym, eating ramen for weeks straight. When I called home during those struggles, my father always had the same response: "This entrepreneurship gamble was your choice, Eleanor. You know we would have helped with graduate school instead." Amanda's college journey couldn't have been more different. She attended 4 different universities over 6 years, changing her major 7 times, from psychology to communications to art history to business, finally settling on a general studies degree. My parents covered her full tuition, housing in luxury student apartments, and a monthly allowance that exceeded my entire business budget that first year. "Your sister needs more support finding her path," my mother explained when I questioned the disparity. "You always knew exactly what you wanted." By my 30th birthday, my company, Eleanor Solutions, had grown into a respected boutique development firm with 32 employees and contracts with several Fortune 500 companies. I purchased a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, drove a sensible SUV, and finally had financial stability. I never flaunted my success, preferring to reinvest in my business and employees. Amanda, at 26, had discovered yet another passion: yoga. After a $3,000 certification program, funded by my parents, she began teaching at an upscale studio twice a week. The rest of her time was spent building her personal brand through carefully curated social media posts from scenic locations and trendy restaurants. "Your sister is so connected to her authentic self," my mother gushed during a family dinner. "She's building something meaningful in today's digital economy." That same evening, my father asked if I could temporarily help out with the property taxes on their lakeside vacation home in Maine, as they were a bit short this quarter. The temporary assistance became a permanent expectation, added to a growing list of family expenses I somehow became responsible for. The most shocking revelation came last Sunday when I stopped by their house to help set up their new smart TV. Amanda arrived halfway through my visit, gushing about her new condo. "It's perfect for my lifestyle," she exclaimed, scrolling through photos on her phone. 2 bedrooms, downtown views, walking distance to my favorite juice bar. My father beamed with pride. We helped with the down payment, of course, 20% to get her the best mortgage rate. I nearly dropped the remote. 20% on a downtown condo would be at least $60,000 in our market. Meanwhile, I was still fielding weekly calls from Amanda asking to borrow a few $100s until her teaching schedule fills up. That evening, after confirming the TV worked properly, I discovered my father had left his email open on his tablet. A message from their financial advisor caught my eye, referencing the monthly transfer to Amanda's household account. With a sick feeling in my stomach, I clicked it open, learning my parents had been covering Amanda's monthly expenses to utilities, car payment, insurance, even her extravagant grocery deliveries to the tune of $3,000 every month, all while asking me to fund their retirement dreams and family obligations. Driving home from my parents' house that evening, memories flooded back of all the times I'd stepped in financially for my family. The property taxes on the main vacation home had been my responsibility for the past 6 years, totaling nearly $40,000. Then there was the European river cruise for their 40th anniversary, which I gifted them at a cost of $22,000. When my father needed knee surgery 3 years ago, I covered the $12,000 out-of-network specialist they insisted would give the best outcome. The list seemed endless. Amanda's car down payment when she really needed reliable transportation for her occasional substitute teaching job. First and last month's rent on 3 different apartments before the condo. The deposit for her failed attempt at starting an organic skincare business. The student loans I quietly paid off when collection calls started coming to my parents' house. As I pulled into my driveway, I calculated that I had loaned Amanda over $40,000 in the past decade, not a penny of which had been repaid. The unspoken understanding was always that she would pay me back when she got established, but somehow that moment never arrived. At family gatherings, my business achievements were acknowledged with polite disinterest. Eleanor's company won another technical award. My father would mention briefly before launching into enthusiastic detail about Amanda's latest Instagram milestone or the famous client who attended her yoga class. When I purchased my home after years of careful saving, my mother's first comment was, "It seems so big for just one person." When I flew them to New York for a Broadway weekend to celebrate my biggest client contract, they spent the entire trip planning how we could do the same vacation but include Amanda next time. My friends had noticed the pattern long before I allowed myself to see it clearly. My best friend Taylor had observed during our college years, "Your parents seem to have different rule books for you and your sister." My former boyfriend Luke once asked, "Do they ever do anything to support you, or is it always you supporting them?" I had defended my family fiercely then, insisting they showed love in different ways. But sitting in my car that night, tears streaming down my face, the truth was undeniable. I wasn't just the less favored child. I was the family ATM. 2 days after discovering the truth about the monthly payments to Amanda, I received a call from my father. "Eleanor, sweetie, we need to discuss the vacation property," he began, his voice carrying that special tone reserved for financial requests. "The insurance premium has gone up this year, and with our fixed income." I found myself agreeing to cover the $2,000 premium increase before I even realized what I was doing. Decades of conditioning to be the responsible one, the fixer, the provider, had created an automatic response. After hanging up, I decided to review my financial records, creating a spreadsheet of every dollar I'd contributed to family expenses. 6 hours and a bottle of wine later, the total made me physically ill. $327,000 over the past decade. Enough for an investment property of my own, or to expand my business into new markets, or simply to work less and enjoy the fruits of my labor. The next morning, still shaken by the revelation, I called my office to clear my schedule for the day. Something kept nagging at me about the conversation with my father. He had mentioned their fixed income again, a phrase he'd been using since taking early retirement 5 years ago at 60, claiming health concerns required him to step back from work. On impulse, I drove to the bank where we shared the family emergency fund account, an account I had established with $50,000 of my money, meant to cover genuine emergencies for any of us. I requested the past year's statements, something I had neglected to monitor closely. The teller's expression was sympathetic as she handed over the printouts. "I've been meaning to call you, Miss Wilson. The automatic transfers have been increasing the past few months. I wanted to make sure you were aware." Automatic transfers? I hadn't set up any automatic transfers. There, in black and white, was the evidence. Monthly transfers from our shared family emergency account directly to Amanda's personal checking account. $5,000 each month labeled lifestyle maintenance. The emergency fund I had established was nearly depleted, with only $8,000 remaining of my original $50,000 deposit. Hands shaking, I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app for the joint account I shared with my parents, for household expenses, another account I primarily funded. The transaction history showed regular withdrawals to pay for the main property expenses as expected, but also revealed something alarming. Large cash withdrawals every few weeks, totaling over $40,000 in the past year alone, with no explanations or receipts. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not only had my parents established a trust fund exclusively for Amanda while constantly relying on my financial support, they were actively draining accounts I had established to help the family. Money that I was told would be saved for their retirement healthcare needs was flowing directly to support Amanda's carefree lifestyle. As I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Hey sis, can you spot me $2,000? Opportunity to join this amazing wellness retreat in Sedona next month. Life-changing. Promise to pay back as soon as possible. Love you." For the first time in my life, I didn't immediately respond with, "Of course." Instead, I turned off my phone and drove to Taylor's house, knowing I needed perspective from someone who truly had my best interests at heart. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had been a tradition since I was a child. Each week, regardless of workload or personal plans, I made the 40-minute drive to sit around the oak dining table my grandfather had crafted, eating my mother's roast chicken and listening to my father's opinions on everything from politics to proper lawn maintenance. This Sunday would be different. After a week of contemplation, conversations with Taylor, and 2 emergency sessions with my therapist, Dr. Harrison, I arrived at my parents' door with a folder of financial records and a heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My mother greeted me with her usual kiss on the cheek. "You look tired, Eleanor. Are you getting enough sleep? I've been telling you for years that running your own business is too much stress." My father barely looked up from the football game on TV. "You're 10 minutes late. Your mother had to keep the food warm." I took a deep breath. "Actually, I'd like to talk before dinner. It's important." Something in my tone caught their attention. The television went silent, and they followed me to the dining room, exchanging confused glances. "What's this about, Eleanor?" my father asked, his voice already taking on a defensive edge. "If it's about the insurance premium, we can figure something else out if it's too much for you right now." "This isn't about the insurance premium," I said, opening my folder. "This is about the trust fund you've established for Amanda, and the monthly payments you've been making to her from our shared emergency fund, and the cash withdrawals from the household account I've been funding." The color drained from my mother's face. My father's expression hardened. "Have you been snooping through our personal business?" he demanded. "I saw the trust fund document on your computer when helping you with email last week," I explained calmly. "The rest I discovered when reviewing our shared accounts, which I have every right to do as the primary contributor." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Eleanor, sweetie, you're misunderstanding family dynamics. We've always treated you girls differently because you have different needs." "Different needs," I repeated. "So Amanda needs $1 million trust fund, monthly allowance, and condo down payment, while I need to work 3 jobs through college and then finance your retirement?" My father leaned forward, voice low and intense. "Your sister needs more help in life. You've always been self-sufficient, Eleanor. We're proud of how independent you are." "Independent wasn't a choice," I countered. "It was a necessity because you gave everything to Amanda." "That's not fair," my mother interjected. "We've supported you emotionally. We've always been there to listen about your business challenges." I laughed, a sharp sound that surprised even me. "You've barely listened to a word I've said about my company in years. Last Christmas, I told you we landed the Jefferson account, a contract worth 7 figures, and you immediately changed the subject to Amanda's 30 new Instagram followers." "See, this is exactly the problem," my father said, voice rising. "You measure everything in dollars and cents. Some things are more important than money, Eleanor." "Like family?" I asked. "Because I've contributed over $300,000 to this family in the past decade. Money that could have gone toward my future, my security." My mother gasped. "That can't possibly be right." I slid the spreadsheet across the table. Every transfer, every check, every cash gift, with dates and amounts. "I've been subsidizing this family while you've been secretly building Amanda's future and depleting accounts I established for emergencies." The front door opened, and Amanda's voice called out, "Hello, family. Sorry I'm late." She bounced into the dining room, designer yoga bag slung over her shoulder, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "What's going on? Why isn't dinner served yet?" My father quickly explained that we were having a discussion about family finances, carefully avoiding specifics. Amanda's eyes narrowed as she looked at the papers on the table. "Is this about money again, Eleanor? Not everyone measures success by their bank account, you know." "This isn't about success," I replied evenly. "It's about honesty and fairness." "Oh, please," Amanda scoffed. "You've always been privileged. Your fancy education, your company, your house. Some of us are trying to build a meaningful life without selling out to corporate America." "My privilege?" I stood up, hands flat on the table. "My privilege was working until 2 a.m. throughout college, while you partied on mom and dad's dime. My privilege was building my company from nothing while you explored your 7th career path. My privilege was being told from childhood that I needed to stand on my own 2 feet, while you've been carried financially your entire adult life." "That's enough!" my father shouted. "Eleanor, you're being selfish and materialistic. Family helps family. That's what we do." "Selfish?" I repeated, voice shaking. "I've given everything to this family. Meanwhile, you established a trust fund for Amanda without ever mentioning it, while continuing to ask me for money monthly." Amanda looked genuinely confused. "What trust fund?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My parents exchanged glances, and in that moment, I realized even Amanda hadn't known the full extent of their financial manipulations. "You didn't tell her?" I asked, incredulous. My mother quickly interjected. "We were waiting for the right time." "It's not what you think, Eleanor. The trust is structured to help Amanda with her future business ventures." While my business never received a dime of family support, I finished. The rest of the evening devolved into chaos. My mother cried, my father shouted, and Amanda alternated between defending our parents and expressing shock at learning about the trust fund's magnitude. No one ate dinner. No one listened to reason. No one acknowledged the fundamental inequity that had shaped our family dynamics for decades. I left feeling empty and unheard, but with a newfound clarity about my place in the family structure. The next day, I received a call from my Aunt Susan, my father's sister who lived in Arizona. "Eleanor, what's this I hear about you attacking your parents over money? They've sacrificed everything for you girls." Stunned, I asked what she meant. "Your father called me very upset. He says you confronted them with accusations about favoring Amanda when they've been struggling to make ends meet on their retirement income. He says you barely help financially while they've been supporting both themselves and Amanda. He's hurt that you'd turn on family this way." The realization that my parents were actively misrepresenting the situation to extended family felt like a physical blow. Not only had they exploited me financially for years, they were now damaging my reputation within the family to maintain control and avoid accountability. "That's not what happened," I said quietly. "I've been supporting them financially for years while they've been secretly funding Amanda's lifestyle and future." "Well, that's not what they told everyone," Aunt Susan replied dubiously. "Your cousin Rachel said your mother was in tears on the phone about your financial obsession and how you've abandoned family responsibilities now that you're successful." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. The narrative being spread throughout the family painted me as the villain, the cold, money-obsessed daughter who abandoned her struggling parents and sister. The truth had been completely inverted, adding emotional manipulation to financial exploitation. That night, I cried until no more tears would come, mourning not just the money but the family I thought I had. The family that, in reality, had been using me for years while systematically undermining my place in their hearts. The 2 weeks following the confrontation passed in a blur of emotional processing and practical recalibration. I threw myself into work during the day, finding comfort in the logical frameworks of software development, where effort yielded predictable results and value was measured objectively. Evenings were spent alternating between sessions with Dr. Harrison and long conversations with Taylor, who provided the unconditional support I'd never experienced from my own family. "What you're describing is a classic golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic," Dr. Harrison explained during our 3rd emergency session. "It's particularly insidious because the responsible child often doesn't recognize their exploitation until decades into the pattern." "But they're my family," I protested weakly. Shouldn't family help each other? Family support should be reciprocal and proportionate, she replied gently. From what you've described, you've been treated as a resource rather than a daughter. Taylor was more direct during our wine night at her apartment. They've been using you as an ATM while building a golden parachute for Princess Amanda. It's emotional and financial abuse, Ellie, and you need to cut them off. Cut them off completely? The thought sent panic through my system. Despite everything, these were the people who had raised me, the only family I had. At least financially, Taylor insisted. They've proven they can't be trusted with access to your money. And maybe some emotional distance would help you see the situation more clearly. Over the next week, I methodically reviewed every financial connection between myself and my family, the emergency fund they had been draining, the joint household account I primarily funded, the monthly transfers I had set up for the vacation, property taxes and insurance, the credit card I had provided to my mother for emergencies that somehow included Amanda's yoga retreats and spa days. I also reviewed my own financial goals, dreams that had been perpetually deferred to meet family obligations, the business expansion I had postponed 3 times, the master's degree in advanced computing I had put on hold, the extended sabbatical to travel through Europe I had planned and canceled when my father needed knee surgery. With mounting clarity, I drafted a detailed email to my parents outlining my decision to establish firm financial boundaries. I explained that I would no longer pay for the vacation home expenses, contribute to the family emergency fund, or provide additional financial support beyond occasional birthday and holiday gifts. I emphasized that this decision wasn't about punishing them, but about establishing healthy boundaries and expectations. I love you both, I concluded, and I hope we can build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. I'm happy to discuss this further when you're ready to have an honest conversation about our family dynamics. After sending the email, I methodically removed my name from the joint accounts, canceled the shared credit card, and stopped all automatic transfers to family expenses. Each action felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating, like cutting moorings I hadn't realized were anchoring me to a sinking ship. That evening, my phone exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from my parents, 23 text messages ranging from guilt-inducing, "How could you do this?" to the people who raised you, to threatening, "You'll regret turning your back on family when you need us someday." 5 voicemails from my mother, each progressively more tearful. I silenced my phone and poured a glass of wine, hands shaking but resolve firm. This was necessary, however painful the process might be. The following day, I received an unexpected call from Jackson Powell, my father's former business partner at Keystone Insurance. We had always been friendly at company events, and he had been supportive of my entrepreneurial journey from the beginning. "Eleanor, I hope I'm not overstepping," he began hesitantly, "but I saw your father yesterday at the golf club, and he seemed very upset about some family situation. He mentioned you were having disagreements about money." "It's complicated," I replied, not wanting to air family drama. "I'm sure it is," Jackson said carefully. "Look, there's something I think you should know. Your father's early retirement wasn't primarily about health concerns as he claimed. He specifically wanted to access his retirement funds early to set up financial arrangements for your sister." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Jackson sighed heavily. "Richard came to the partners 5 years ago requesting an exception to our standard retirement policies. Typically, accessing full benefits before 65 requires documented medical necessity. Richard had some minor blood pressure issues, but nothing that prevented work. He specifically mentioned needing to secure Amanda's future as his motivation." "And the partners agreed?" I asked, stunned. "Not initially," Jackson admitted, "but Richard was persuasive. He brought photos of Amanda to meetings, told emotional stories about her struggles, even implied she had undiagnosed learning disabilities that would prevent her financial independence. He broke down crying during the final partners meeting. Several partners have children with genuine special needs, so it resonated with them. The manipulation was breathtaking in its calculation. My father had engineered his early retirement specifically to fund Amanda's trust, using emotional tactics to bend company policies. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked quietly. There was a long pause. "Because yesterday he was trying the same approach to access additional funds from a supplemental executive retirement plan he shouldn't be eligible for yet." He mentioned needing to cover expenses his oldest daughter had abandoned. Something in his tone made me uncomfortable. After thanking Jackson and ending the call, I sat at my kitchen table in stunned silence. The extent of my father's manipulation was even greater than I had imagined. He had orchestrated his entire retirement around providing for Amanda while simultaneously relying on me for ongoing financial support, and now was attempting to access more funds by painting me as the villain. That night, I finalized my decision. After years of financial exploitation disguised as family obligation, I would reclaim my resources and refocus on my own well-being and future. The guilt was still there, a lifetime of conditioning not easily overcome, but underneath it was a growing sense of righteous anger and determination. I was done being the family ATM. The consequences of establishing financial boundaries with my family were swift and severe. Within hours of cutting financial ties, my phone became a battleground of accusations, guilt trips, and outright hostility. My father's texts escalated from confused, "There must be some mistake with the bank," to angry, "After everything we've done for you," to threatening, "You'll regret this decision when you need family support." My mother alternated between tearful voicemails about breaking her heart and passive, aggressive messages about praying for my return to family values. Amanda's response was the most public and vindictive. She posted a carefully edited screenshot of part of my email on Instagram, accompanied by a tearful selfie and caption, "Devastated that money has become more important than family to someone I trusted. True colors finally showing. Heartbroken family betrayal." The post received hundreds of sympathetic comments, including several from extended family members and childhood friends who had no context for the situation. Cousin Rachel commented, "Always knew she was cold, but this is shocking." My mother's best friend wrote, "Your parents gave everything for both of you girls. Shameful behavior." I resisted the urge to defend myself publicly, recognizing that engaging would only escalate the drama. Instead, I blocked Amanda's account and focused on maintaining my boundaries despite the mounting pressure. The real difficulties began when practical realities set in for my family. 2 weeks after I stopped financial support, bill due dates for the vacation property arrived. My father's text took on a desperate tone. "The property tax bill is due next week. $8,216. Where should they send the late notices when we miss payment? Insurance lapsed on the lake house. Hope nothing happens to it. Mortgage payment declined. Is this really how you want things to be, Eleanor?" Each message arrived without pleasantries, without asking about my well-being, without acknowledgement of our relationship beyond financial transactions. The pattern confirmed everything I had come to realize about my place in the family structure. Meanwhile, the extended family pressure campaign intensified. Aunt Susan called daily with updates on how devastated my parents were. Uncle Paul sent a lengthy email about honoring thy father and mother with biblical verses highlighted. 3 cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly reached out to check on me while casually mentioning how much my parents had always supported me. "They're using flying monkeys," Dr. Harrison explained during our session. "It's a common tactic when someone disrupts an established family system. They'll deploy anyone who might have influence over you to re-establish control." "Flying monkeys?" I asked. "From The Wizard of Oz," she clarified. "The flying monkeys the Wicked Witch sends out to do her bidding. In family systems, they're the people recruited to pressure someone back into their assigned role. The pressure wasn't limited to family. Former neighbors, parents' church friends, even my father's golf buddies began reaching out with concerned messages about my parents' sudden financial hardship and how they were worried about them losing their vacation home after all they'd sacrificed for their pruble daughters. The narrative being spread painted my parents as selfless providers who had given everything for their children, only to be abandoned by their successful daughter who had become too important to care for family. The complete inversion of reality was mind-boggling. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries with increasing confidence. Each guilt-inducing message strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. Each manipulation tactic became more transparent as I gained perspective on the unhealthy dynamics that had shaped my family relationships. 4 weeks after establishing boundaries, the property tax deadline for the vacation home arrived. My father's message that morning contained no greeting, just, "Property taxes are due today. $8,216. Need immediate transfer. For the first time in my adult life, I responded to a financial request from my father with a simple, "No. This is your responsibility now." His reply was instantaneous and revealing. "So this is how you repay everything we've done for you? By letting family property go into default?" I took a deep breath and responded, "Dad, I've contributed over $300,000 to family expenses in the past decade while you established a trust fund exclusively for Amanda. I'm no longer available to fund family financial obligations while being treated as less valuable than my sister." Radio silence followed for 3 days. Then, on Saturday morning, my banking app alerted me to an attempted access to my personal investment account, an old account I had established in my early 20s. The access attempt used my childhood password, my first pet's name followed by my birth year, credentials my parents had helped me set up when I was first learning about saving. They had kept those credentials for over 15 years and were now attempting to access my personal finances without permission. The breach of trust was staggering. Not only had they exploited me financially while favoring my sister, but they were now attempting what amounted to financial identity theft when their source of funds was cut off. I immediately changed all my passwords and security questions, activated two-factor authentication on every account, and froze my credit with all 3 major bureaus as a precaution. The incident crystallized the true nature of my family's regard for me. I was a resource to be exploited, not a daughter to be loved. That evening, Amanda launched another social media offensive, this time claiming I was threatening elderly parents with financial ruin out of spite. Several distant relatives commented their support, including Uncle Paul, who wrote, "Some people forget where they came from once they get a taste of success. Shameful." The coordinated attack might have devastated me weeks earlier, but now I recognized it as a desperate attempt to re-establish control. My parents and sister weren't used to hearing no from me, and they were pulling out every manipulation tactic in their arsenal to force me back into compliance. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt genuinely strong in my resolve. The attempted account access had crossed a line that clarified everything. These weren't the actions of loving parents concerned about family welfare. They were the actions of people who viewed me primarily as a financial resource. I sent one final text to my father. "I've documented the unauthorized attempt to access my investment account. Any further attempts to access my financial accounts without permission will be reported to the appropriate authorities as financial fraud. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms when you're ready." Then I blocked their numbers, removed myself from family social media groups, and focused on rebuilding the life and dreams I had put on hold for so many years. 2 months of blessed silence followed my decision to block contact with my family. In that time, I reconnected with parts of myself that had been subsumed by family obligations. I restarted the master's degree program I had postponed 3 times. I began serious planning for the business expansion I had dreamed about for years. I even booked a 2-week trip to Portugal for the following spring, something the old Eleanor would never have done without checking family needs first. The constant background anxiety I hadn't even realized I carried waiting for the next financial emergency, the next demand, the next guilt trip gradually dissipated. I slept better. I laughed more easily with friends. Even my employees commented on the change, with my office manager Jennifer noting, "You seem lighter somehow, like you've set down something heavy." Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw 3 familiar figures on my front porch. My mother, father, and Amanda, all looking significantly less polished than usual. My father's luxury watch was conspicuously absent. My mother's designer handbag had been replaced with a canvas tote. Amanda's carefully maintained highlights had grown out, showing 2 inches of natural brown roots. My hand hesitated on the doorknob as anxiety flooded back. Dr. Harrison's voice echoed in my mind. "If you do decide to engage, maintain your boundaries firmly. They will test them immediately." Taking a deep breath, I opened the door but did not step aside to invite them in. "Eleanor, thank goodness," my mother burst out. "We've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I was clear about needing space," I replied calmly. "Why are you here?" My father stepped forward, his expression a practiced blend of contrition and authority. "We have a family emergency, Eleanor. We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I allowed them inside, directing them to the living room while I remained standing. What emergency? They exchanged glances before my father spoke. The vacation property is in foreclosure proceedings. We couldn't cover the back taxes and missed mortgage payments. The bank is moving to repossess. And, I prompted when he paused expectantly. And we need your help, Amanda interjected, her voice rising. They're taking our family home, the place we spent every summer. That's unfortunate, I said carefully. But as I explained in my email, I'm no longer in a position to cover family property expenses. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Eleanor, please. That house holds all our family memories. Your father and I always planned to leave it to you girls someday. That's news to me, I replied. Every conversation about the property's future centered on Amanda eventually taking ownership while I continued paying the expenses. My father's face flushed. That's not true. We always intended to be fair. I raised an eyebrow but didn't argue the point. What about the trust fund you established for Amanda? Surely those funds could cover the property expenses. A tense silence filled the room. Amanda shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. The trust has certain restrictions, my father finally admitted. It's primarily for Amanda's future security, not accessible for general expenses. Unlike my money, which was always accessible for whatever the family needed, I noted, including Amanda's lifestyle maintenance. My mother reached for my hand, which I carefully moved away. Sweetie, we made mistakes. We see that now. But this isn't just about money, it's about preserving our family legacy. A legacy funded almost entirely by me for the past decade, I pointed out. While you secretly built financial security for Amanda, my father's composed facade cracked slightly. This attitude isn't helpful, Eleanor. We're facing a real crisis here. Amanda is being evicted from her condo because we can't help with her payments anymore. The vacation property will be lost. Is that what you want? To see your family suffer? The emotional blackmail was so transparent it almost made me laugh. What I wanted was to be valued as a daughter, not as a financial resource. What I wanted was honesty about family finances rather than manipulation and secrecy. What I wanted was acknowledgement of my contributions rather than constant demands for more. We do value you, my mother insisted. You've always been our rock. A rock you stood on while lifting Amanda up, I replied quietly. My father suddenly clutched his chest, face contorting in pain as he slumped against the sofa cushions. My heart, he gasped. My mother cried out in alarm while Amanda rushed to his side. Dad! Eleanor, call an ambulance! I remained still, watching the performance with sad recognition. This is the third heart episode you've had during difficult conversations, Dad. The same performance you used when I questioned the money missing from Grandma's estate, when I asked why you withdrew from the college fund you promised existed, and now when facing accountability for financial exploitation. My father's pain miraculously subsided enough for him to glare at me. You think I would fake a health emergency? What kind of daughter are you? The kind who finally sees the manipulation tactics clearly, I answered steadily. If you're genuinely having chest pain, I'll call an ambulance. Otherwise, I'd appreciate honesty for once in our relationship. After a tense moment, he straightened up, the episode apparently resolved without medical intervention. You've become cold, Eleanor. Success has changed you. Not success, I corrected. Clarity has changed me. Now, unless there's something else, I think this conversation is finished. Amanda, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during most of the exchange, suddenly burst into tears. Not the pretty, camera-ready tears of her social media posts, but ugly, body, shaking sobs that seemed to emerge from somewhere authentic. Everything's falling apart, she choked out between sobs. I can't pay my bills. My credit cards are maxed out. The condo association is threatening legal action for unpaid fees. I don't know what to do. Something in her breakdown felt different from the calculated emotional displays I'd witnessed throughout our lives. For the first time, Amanda seemed genuinely frightened rather than entitled. What happened to your trust fund? I asked directly. Amanda looked up, confusion evident through her tears. I can't access most of it until I'm 35. There are all these conditions about approved purposes and minimum withdrawal periods. Dad said it was structured that way to protect the principal, but it means I only get small amounts quarterly. I turned to my father. You told me it was for Amanda's lifestyle maintenance. You've been making it sound like she had full access. He shifted uncomfortably. We didn't want to worry you with the details. You mean you didn't want me questioning why you were still asking me for money if Amanda had a trust fund, I corrected. Amanda wiped her eyes, looking between us with growing confusion. What are you talking about? What money did you ask Eleanor for? My parents exchanged nervous glances, and in that moment, I realized Amanda had been kept in the dark about many aspects of our family's financial arrangements. Amanda, I said carefully. Our parents have been asking me to fund family expenses for years, the vacation, property taxes and maintenance, their anniversary trips, medical bills, and regular contributions to accounts they claimed were for retirement and emergencies. Meanwhile, they established a trust fund for your future and told me nothing about it. Amanda's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. That's not possible. They told me you never helped with family finances because you were saving everything for your business. The revelation hung in the air between us. Amanda turned to our parents, eyes wide. Is that true? You've been taking money from Eleanor all this time while telling me she never helped? My mother began another round of tears. My father's jaw tightened defensively. It wasn't like that, he insisted. We were managing family resources in the way that made sense for everyone. By lying to both of us? Amanda asked, her voice rising. By making me resent Eleanor for years because I thought she was hoarding her money while you struggled? She turned to me, genuine shock in her expression. They told me you promised to transfer part of your business to me eventually. They said that's why they were helping me so much financially, because you had committed to securing my future through the business, but kept delaying. The magnitude of the deception stunned me into silence. Not only had my parents exploited me financially while favoring Amanda, but they had deliberately poisoned our relationship by lying to each of us about the other. I never promised any such thing, I finally managed. I've barely been able to discuss my business with them for years. They change the subject whenever I bring it up. Amanda's face crumpled as years of family mythology unraveled before her eyes. They said that's why I deserved more help from them, because you were getting the business advantage but wouldn't share it. They said that's why the trust fund was fair. My father stood abruptly. This is all being twisted out of context. We've done everything to protect this family, to secure both your futures in different ways. By lying to us both and turning us against each other? I asked quietly. For once, he had no ready answer. In the painful silence that followed, I saw our family dynamic with perfect clarity. My parents had manipulated both daughters, exploiting my financial success and sense of responsibility while nurturing Amanda's entitlement and dependency. They had deliberately created friction between us to maintain control and avoid accountability. And now that the financial house of cards was collapsing, they expected me to rebuild it without addressing the fundamental dishonesty at its foundation. I think you should leave now, I said firmly. I need time to process everything I've learned today. My parents gathered their things in stony silence. Amanda lingered behind as they headed to the door. I didn't know, she said quietly. I really didn't know they were taking so much from you. For the first time in years, I saw my sister instead of my parents' favored child. She had been manipulated too, though in very different ways. We should talk, I said, but not today, and not with them present. She nodded, a fragile understanding passing between us as she followed our parents out the door. The weeks following the confrontation brought significant changes to our family dynamic. After years of playing the role of dutiful daughter and financial safety net, I maintained my boundaries while processing the complex emotions unleashed by decades of manipulation. 3 days after the failed intervention at my house, Amanda texted asking to meet for coffee alone. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. She arrived looking uncharacteristically subdued, her designer yoga wear replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, her face free of the carefully applied makeup that usually populated her Instagram feed. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began after ordering a simple black coffee instead of her usual complicated specialty drink, and a lot of looking through old financial records. What did you find? I asked. That everything you said was true. She stared into her coffee cup. They've been lying to me about you, and to you about me, for years, maybe our whole lives. The admission hung between us, both painful and oddly liberating. I found emails where Dad specifically told his financial advisor to hide the trust fund details from you, she continued, and where Mom directed the family accountant to avoid mentioning Eleanor's contributions in tax documents. Why do you think they did it? I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Amanda considered the question carefully. I think they needed to control both of us, just in different ways. They controlled me by making me financially dependent and emotionally insecure. They controlled you by exploiting your sense of responsibility and manipulating your guilt. Her insight surprised me. The sister I had dismissed as entitled and self-absorbed had clearly been doing some serious reflection. I'm not blameless here, she admitted. I accepted their narrative because it was comfortable. It was easier to believe you were selfish than to question why I was receiving so much support while contributing so little. Our conversation lasted 3 hours, peeling back layers of misunderstanding and manufactured resentment that had defined our relationship for decades. For the first time since childhood, we spoke honestly as sisters rather than as competitors in our parents' dysfunctional system. I need to stand on my own feet, Amanda concluded as we prepared to leave. But I have no idea how to do that. I've never been truly independent. After careful consideration, I made her an offer. I would provide temporary support for 3 months, covering basic living expenses while she found stable employment. In return, she would attend financial counseling sessions and job training. It wasn't charity, it was a pathway to independence. Why would you help me after everything that's happened? She asked, genuine confusion in her expression. Because we're both victims of the same dysfunctional system, just in different ways, I explained. And because breaking that system means helping you become truly independent from them too. Amanda accepted the offer with unexpected humility. Within 2 weeks, she had found an affordable apartment far from the luxury downtown district and secured an entry-level position at a marketing firm with regular hours and benefits. The job wasn't glamorous, but it offered stability and growth potential that her sporadic yoga teaching never had. Meanwhile, my parents faced the consequences of their financial manipulation. Unable to maintain the vacation property, they reluctantly put it on the market. The sale covered the outstanding mortgage and taxes, but left little profit after years of minimal principal payments. They downsized from their sprawling suburban home to a modest retirement condo, a practical decision that should have been made years earlier rather than relying on my subsidies to maintain an unsustainable lifestyle. My father made one last attempt to reassert control 6 weeks after our confrontation. He called from an unfamiliar number, bypassing my blocks. The vacation home is gone, he said without preamble, his voice heavy with accusation. 40 years of family tradition destroyed because you abandoned your responsibilities. Those weren't my responsibilities, I replied calmly. They were financial obligations you chose to take on while simultaneously funding Amanda's trust and relying on my support without transparency. You're destroying this family over money, he insisted. No, Dad. The family was damaged by lies, manipulation, and exploitation. I'm simply refusing to enable those patterns any longer. So that's it? You're turning your back on family traditions and memories? Traditions built on financial deception aren't worth preserving, I answered. I'm open to building new traditions based on honesty and mutual respect when you're ready for that. The line went silent for a long moment before he spoke again, his voice suddenly smaller. I don't know how to be in a relationship with you if you won't let me guide the family. The admission was perhaps the most honest thing my father had ever said to me. His entire identity was wrapped up in being the family patriarch, directing our lives and finances from a position of unquestioned authority. My independence threatened that identity at its core. That's something to explore with a therapist, I suggested. I can recommend someone who specializes in family systems if you're interested. He declined the offer, but ended the call without further accusations, a small step toward potentially healthier communication. 6 months after establishing boundaries, I hosted Thanksgiving at my home. The gathering was smaller than previous family holidays, just Amanda, my close friend Taylor and her husband, and 2 colleagues who had nowhere else to go. My parents had declined the invitation, still struggling to adapt to the new family dynamic. Amanda arrived early to help with preparations, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. She moved around my kitchen with growing confidence, sharing stories from her new job and the night classes she had started in business administration. "I had dinner with Mom and Dad last weekend," she mentioned as we prepared the turkey. "They're adjusting, I think. Dad actually asked about my classes instead of just talking about himself." "That's progress," I acknowledged. "Mom asked if you might come for Christmas," Amanda added carefully. "I considered the possibility. Maybe, if we can agree on some ground rules first." As our guests arrived and dinner began, I observed the comfortable dynamic around my table with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by genuine laughter rather than the tense, performance-oriented interactions that had characterized family gatherings throughout my life. Midway through dinner, my phone buzzed with a text. To my surprise, it was from my father. "The turkey always looks better at your house. Your mother wants to know if you brine it first." The message wasn't an apology or a profound reconciliation, but it was an acknowledgement of my existence outside of financial utility, a small step toward whatever our relationship might become. After dessert, as guests moved to the living room for coffee, Amanda pulled me aside. "I need to say something I should have said months ago," she began awkwardly. "I'm sorry, Eleanor, not just for taking advantage, but for never seeing how much you were carrying for all of us. For resenting you because of lies I was told, for never questioning why things were so easy for me and so hard for you." The apology was simple but profound. For the first time in our adult lives, Amanda was seeing me clearly, acknowledging the imbalance that had shaped our relationship. "I'm not angry with you anymore," I told her honestly. "We were both playing roles assigned to us long ago. The difference now is we get to choose our own paths forward." Just as we were clearing the last dishes, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find my father standing awkwardly on the porch, alone. "Your mother decided to stay home," he explained, hands thrust deep in his coat pockets. "But I wanted to stop by, just for a minute." I invited him in, surprised but cautiously optimistic. He declined dessert but accepted coffee, sitting stiffly at the edge of the living room as conversations swirled around him. Eventually, he found his way to my side as I refreshed the coffee carafe. "The house looks nice," he offered awkwardly. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you," I replied, waiting to see where this was heading. He stared into his coffee cup for a long moment before speaking again. "I was wrong," he said so quietly. I almost missed it. "About many things." Coming from my father, these simple words represented a seismic shift. In all my life, I had never heard him admit error or failure. "What things?" I prompted gently. "The way we treated you compared to Amanda," he admitted. "The financial expectations. The trust fund secrecy." He paused, struggling visibly. "I see too much of myself in you, Eleanor. The responsibility, the competence, the drive. I resented you for succeeding where I had compromised." The admission stunned me into silence. All these years, I had believed my parents favored Amanda because they loved her more. The reality was more complex. My father had projected his own unfulfilled ambitions and insecurities onto me, creating impossible expectations and then punishing me for meeting them. "That couldn't have been easy to say," I acknowledged. "It wasn't," he agreed. "But it's true. And at 70, I'm finally learning that honesty might be more important than pride." We didn't solve decades of dysfunction in one conversation. The road to a healthier family dynamic would be long and undoubtedly bumpy. But as my father accepted a slice of pumpkin pie from Amanda and awkwardly complimented Taylor on her holiday sweater, I glimpsed the possibility of a relationship built on truth rather than transaction. In the months that followed, we established new patterns of interaction. My parents no longer asked for financial support, learning to live within their means for perhaps the first time in their adult lives. Amanda continued her journey toward independence, occasionally asking for advice but never for bailouts. Family gatherings became less frequent but more genuine. The trust that had been broken wouldn't be repaired quickly or easily. Some days, old patterns threatened to reemerge. Some conversations still ended in hurt feelings or misunderstandings. But slowly, incrementally, we were building something new from the rubble of our former family structure. The $1 million trust fund that had catalyzed our family reckoning remained in place for Amanda's future, but no longer represented a secret betrayal. Instead, it became a topic we could discuss openly, acknowledging the favoritism it represented while working to build relationships not defined by financial transactions. As for me, I finally funded the business expansion I had dreamed of for years, opening a second office and hiring 15 new employees. I completed my master's degree with honors and took that long postponed trip to Portugal, sending my family postcards from each city I visited. Most importantly, I learned that establishing boundaries wasn't selfish, but necessary for authentic relationships. That financial support without reciprocal respect wasn't generosity but exploitation. That family connections should be built on mutual care rather than obligation or manipulation. Standing on my patio one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I reflected on the painful journey that had brought me to this peaceful moment. The discovery of the trust fund had shattered my illusions about family dynamics, but from those fragments emerged a clearer vision of what healthy relationships could be. I no longer measured my worth by what I could provide financially. My parents no longer viewed me primarily as a resource to be tapped. Amanda no longer resented me based on manufactured narratives. We were, all of us, finally learning that true family support means encouraging independence and growth rather than enabling dependence and entitlement. That love should lift everyone up rather than elevating some at the expense of others. That honesty, however difficult, creates stronger bonds than comfortable lies. And when my father texted about property taxes these days, he included a hello, a check, in about my well-being, and no expectation that I would solve his financial challenges. Progress, one relationship at a time. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? How did you balance your own needs with family obligations? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in creating healthy boundaries in your own relationships.